Hey, how you doing? So thanks again for joining us. And today we're going to be chatting to Josh from Blocksee about sort of community and communications in Web3 because, well, we'll get into it, but I reckon there's a ton of problems with communications with the communities in Web3. But before we do, I guess, Josh, if you could just tell us a bit about you, Blocksee, what you guys are up to, and how it all works.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Pete. Yeah, my name is Joshua Hashemzadeh. I'm the co-founder and CMO of Blocksee, which is essentially a Web3 CRM tool. And so what we're doing is allowing users to, just as they would in Web 2, aggregate user profiles, segment audiences, run marketing campaigns, manage communications to their community. But instead of using things like a email or SMS or having, personal information like your name, basically give you a profile on these platforms. We're using a wallet address and smart contract and building everything really on a blockchain native trajectory. So this kind of complements, I think, what many people see as their current tech stack in Web 2 with Salesforce, HubSpot, all of the sort of tried and trues. But we're really kind of filling in that gap for Web 3 where there aren't really any tools right now. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the mission right now, and we're excited to keep bringing more and more projects on and seeing what people are doing in Web 3.
Yeah, it's the thing as well because like you talk about like the CRMs and like Salesforce, HubSpot, all of these things in Web two, absolutely huge companies, and like
Mm-hmm.
used by so many people. Like I've used HubSpot extensively in the past. I think it's great at what it does. It enables so much more, and I'm surprised that those sort of the established players just haven't offered any sort of Web three functionality yet.
It's tricky, right? Because like you think about a company at that scale, and there's like all these different parameters around how they can build, what they can build, being public companies now too. Uh, you're not as nimble as you once were,
Yeah.
when you get that big. And I think with Salesforce and all these guys, when they're that size too, you're like, does it even make sense for us to just build like a dashboard, like a Slack or a Monday.com, which Salesforce invests in, right? They kind of invest in whatever competition comes their way, because for them it's like they have their core model. They don't want to cannibalize that, and anything that they build has to really be a platform, kind of like you can't just be this niche player at that scale. So it just, I think, changes the approach. So that I've seen them try and work on things like their own blockchains, like private chains for their CRMs, and I'm sure like more of these solutions are coming. But really the most activity I've seen around like community management, quality Web3, like infrastructural tools that brands and native projects can really run with. It's all just been like these kind of indie teams, and I love that about Web3. I like that people are just kind
Yeah.
of getting up and saying like, let's build this ourselves.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's a thing like, as you said, it seems to be all these little indie teams that are putting this stuff together. Highly valuable stuff. Um, but yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's definitely necessary. Super valuable stuff. Indie teams putting it together, and I just hope that there's enough traction there for these teams to sort of build something that then helps more and more people. Because there are some different issues and stuff that need to be addressed to bring more people into Web three, which will then add more value to the CRMs and the companies that need to use them and all of this. But I guess the sort of onboarding issue
Sure.
is a discussion for another day.
We're working through that now, and I mean, onboarding is it's going to be different, I think, for every project. But for us, as little friction as possible is ultimately the goal.
Yeah,
And so right now it's largely wallet based, but to have certain extensions to email or to have things that integrate better with the sort of Web 2 infrastructure that exists right now, I think that's kind of our Web 2.5 ticket to getting everyone
yeah.
in the conversation.
No, I agree. There's that's one of the difficulties I see with a lot of the on ramps across the industry. Is like there's no bridge between Web two and Web three. There seems to be like a hard stop. There's few brands that have taken like a Web 2.5 approach. It's like, oh, you have to have a wallet to use this, and the people who don't quite understand this don't really want to keep a 24 word seed phrase safe or understand how a wallet works. They then can't interact with these projects, and it's like, yeah, that's it. But I mean, do you guys come from like obviously like a Web two background, but is it in a similar industries that you were working, like sort of CRMs, marketing, that sort of stuff, the Blocksy team?
Yes. Short answer is yes. I think that we have a really kind of diverse background. I think both my co-founder partner Eric and I, kind of have an affinity for the arts and started there. Honestly, in terms of how we got into blockchain and Web3, I studied as a painter. He studied music and literature, and then found ourselves over our careers going into marketing and working with Fortune 100 companies and building CRMs and all of the above to help manage the infrastructure for creators and for different projects that we thought were interesting. And so now, looking at this, I largely started this project because I myself was like, okay, I want to do some kind of project in Web3 around the things that I care about, the communities that I'm involved with in the arts. And as I got on that path, very quickly, as I got onto that path, I was like, oh my God, this is almost impossible. Like, you're on 10 spreadsheets just to send an invite out. And so we're like, well, you know what? Let's put our marketing hats back on, and let's build the tools to help us build these communities, and then we'll get to the good stuff down the road.
Yeah.
So we're really interested in being able to see also what everyone else is building. I mean, the amount of projects that we're working with, where we're like, you're doing what with NFTs, or you're using this for this.
Yeah.
It's really kind of interesting. So so that's how we got into it. I my day job is working with Fortune 100 companies doing media buying. And then Eric has ran marketing departments for enterprise companies. So we've kind of been in the ring for quite some time. And then our CTO Matt in Spain, he's been building as a dev, not just in Web3 but in Web2, for several years as well. And then now has built games and stuff in Web3 and has a pretty extensive development background on blockchain. So it was just kind of a natural fit for us that we all came together and we're like, you know what, let's make this an ecosystem and a tool that really lets people claim ownership and equity in the things that they're making, and I think that's what Web3 and blockchain is all about. So we're super stoked on that.
No, 100%. Sounds like it's like the typical sort of entrepreneurial sort of story. Your past experience, what you're interested in now, you see the gap in the market, the problem that's there, you try and solve it. And yeah, there is definitely, I think, a massive gap with the communication, because like communities, I have a weird love-hate relationship with communities because I think they're so valuable for a lot of projects. I'm just terrible at keeping a community engaged. And so, it's a real hard one for me. I don't really know where to focus my time. But you said that you're working with a lot of projects that, you're kind of interested in what they're doing with NFTs. Are they built, are they genuinely sort of community first type things?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because we see some that are more NFT kind of not PFP but like NFT driven projects around community and like tokenization where people are collecting, right? Some of that is PFP, some of it extends beyond that to gaming and other kind of consumer facing projects. But then other people are using it for more infrastructure stuff. I mean, we have a client, New Stockyard Group, where they're basically using it to ID cattle. With NFTs. They're using facial recognition to do NFTs for cattle instead of doing the traditional ear tags. And they're managing agriculture.
Cattle facial recognition.
Cattle I mean, it works as good on cattle as it does on us, which is kind of wild. And they're using this to be able to monitor, from the herd to market, kind of that entire supply chain and understand, where they're migrating, and eventually you can imagine them securitizing these things and allowing other people to trade cattle in a way that's totally digitized and almost gamified. Total traditional market, right? Like something as traditional as it gets, and it's like front facing NFTs. It's kind of wild.
But to me, that's like I've always thought that kind of thing, maybe not as specific as facial recognition for cattle, but that kind of thing is like the future of NFTs. Is like anything that can be bought and sold and traded, like multiple times, passed between different people. Yes. As we move away, even in anything that you're doing in your life, we're moving away from sort of a paper-based system to digitizing more and more. The more that we can digitize, and obviously with NFTs and sort of distributed ledger being immutable and all of this sort of stuff, it seems to make complete sense for everything from sort of ownership of car, property, all of this sort of stuff. I never considered cattle, but it seems to be that's just again the next step. yeah. It's a very strange one that, but 100%. I feel like that is the future of it. And
that extends. I mean, we have other clients, that are doing things with like fundraising for movies and film production, basically using NFTs and tokenization, right? I think, like, to your point, anything that has a transactional ability, anything that we prescribe value to and that we're trading or bartering, can be a token. It can be an NFT. It can be built on blockchain or stored on blockchain. And if, like, you really think about what that pertains to, I mean, it is literally everything and anything in the world. And
Yeah.
so I think that we're going to see more of a push towards that tokenization, and it makes sense to have tools to help manage that. For us, it's marketing and community building and kind of CRM, but obviously the gaps are huge everywhere you look, and I think there's a lot of room for people to build and think about what community is for them, and also what community is in this new era of the internet, right? I think, like, in Web 2, so many people understand it as, like, just what Facebook and Google allow you to think about it as, right? Because it's where you have your profiles or whatever. But when everything's connected in a way that blockchain is, and you can build smart contracts that say that there's, unique activations or, condition based principles for you to interact with this community, or there's token gates or whatever, the way you engage with community, I think, is also going to change dramatically. The way that you have opportunities to build brand, to tell stories, to engage people, to create value, I think is going to be pretty immense, and totally different from whatever we've seen in the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is all going to change, and I don't think anybody's really figured it out perfectly yet. But is there, like, common problems and mistakes that you might see in your work with communities and people building communities in Web3? Is there anything that, like, is perhaps a problem as we move into this sort of more community-based businesses?
Sure. Yeah, no, great question. And obviously, coming off a bear market here, like, there's been a lot of destruction of community. There's been a lot of, I think, false promise to community, and so I think there are a lot of problems inherently with the promise of offering that, and then also with how people perceive the value that they're actually delivering to these communities. On that, I think you'll see that in this market, a lot of the bad actors have kind of gone away, and you see that if there wasn't something that was there previous to a high floor price, chances are you didn't really have a community. Chances are you had a bunch of people who were interested in making a quick buck, that wanted to flip something, tale as old as time. But I think when you think about the people who are still existing in the space, the people who are actually having positive traction and are seeing growth with NFTs and the communities that they're building on Web3, I think of Topshop, I think of Axie Infinity, Nike, and a lot of the luxury brands are getting into the space now. All of these companies and organizations, like, they had a community, real community of people who were buying goods from them, who were going to their events and services, who were championing their products for years, for decades even, right? That takes, it doesn't get built overnight. It's there because they've been there. It's because they've done the legwork and they've had this kind of relationship to their end user. All the people that were popping up with these NFTs on OpenSea, they literally heard about it on Discord or from a friend, or someone made a ton of money and they just wanted to get in on the action. And I think, like, that's not always the best way to build community and trust, from the get-go. And so I think you need to really focus on what your value proposition is.
Yeah, because I think you kind of hit on something there that I often think about with these, like, all of these huge brands that are in the space that are seeing some, positive traction. A lot of the time, as you said, they've been around for decades. And so when they plan something like this, they're not planning to turn a quick profit in 3-6 months. They've got a longer term vision of how this is going to be working. And I feel like a lot of the projects that have come up and sort of died off very quickly, as you said, they were just there to try and pump that floor price up so that they could make a quick buck. It was always a short term play, and that's never going to work, because all that you do then is you attract a community of people who were just looking for short term gains. And so as soon as they've got it, they're off onto the next thing, which with the bear market now is not Web3. It's, everyone's probably moved off to AI to see how they can make a quick buck there.
Yeah, everyone's on ChatGPT now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can spin this 1,000 ways. That's great.
But you're totally right. And I think, like, you got to think about what that does also for your team, right? If you're running a project and you guys are trying to deliver X value or become the next big company, like, how are your employees and your core team going to feel when 90% of your community is gone the next day? And like they're gonna not think that there's job security. They're not gonna think that what you guys are building is genuine. And I think like it becomes a kind of house of cards in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
I think you just want to avoid that, right? Like with any community, Web 2, Web 3, or just analog, plain old in the real world, you just want to make sure that there's trust between people. And I
Yeah.
think for us, like our approach with these tools is like we want to integrate as much to the first party data as possible, right? So like for us, plugging into websites, allowing token gated experiences to live natively on branded pages rather than your Discord or Telegram where people may be unfamiliar or unsure of how to navigate. By creating secure protocols, well branded protocols that build on your brand trust, I think we'll see a real push for community, and I think also a real push for brands to own their own data and to own their own engagement, which I think is very exciting because right now it's all going to like 5 companies, so it's like it'd be
Yeah.
cool to see that spread around the world.
What do you think? What do you think the reason for that is, though? I mean, I think I've projects that I've been sort of interested in, and I've joined their communities and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For me, one of the issues that I always think is that, and we spoke about this just before we hit record, which was just the channels that are being used for communication are so suboptimal. I'm joining these projects because I'm kind of interested in what they're doing, and I miss 90% of the updates because
Yeah,
Discord in particular is like it's a fire. Telegram's kind of worse, I think, in a way. It's like a fire hose of information. Somebody releases like an announcement, everybody comments, likes, whatever, and it's gone in the feed. And there's no way I'm going to scroll back through 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 messages to see
sure.
what it is.
100%, and I have experienced Discord overload, Telegram overload, in the same way, and it's really hard because you join 5 projects to learn about the space, and then all of a sudden you have 500 notifications, and everyone's chattering about floor prices and all these things that are totally distracting from like either the core mission or why you joined or whatever.
Yeah,
I think simplifying that makes sense, and this is part of why we want to take an approach where you can aggregate more of that either to your site or to channels that you own. So that if you need to come back, that there's no confusion as to there was an update on Discord or your this interface moved somewhere. It's like it's some kind of familiarity there. And I think also in terms of managing the communications, like Discord, Telegram, they're very much like total group chat. Having direct lines of communication to your users also makes sense. I think it's something that you want to think about for your community. Do we need to have a group chat? Sometimes it's
yeah,
counterintuitive to the projects and how they're executing on things. And also to know that those tools were not made for Web3, right? They were kind of shoehorned into the role, and because of virality or whatever on the internet, like they just became the kind of status quo for a year or two. And I think like people should not just assume that that's the de facto way to do it, which is very quickly when we started taking that approach, we're like, this is really inefficient. Community managers hate it because they're having to go between so many different platforms just to manage a communication, which means that largely
yeah,
they're not communicating effectively. It's all kinds of things like this that you want to streamline, and we have the answers in Web 2, right? There's interfaces for these things for businesses, for projects. They just haven't really been built yet in Web 3, which is why we've built them and we're bringing them to everyone with Blocksee. So
Can I say, because you said that direct communication between brand and consumer, what would you like? How would that look like in Web3? Because I mean, Web2 is
for
obviously
sure.
going to be sort of email. Is it still email?
Mhm.
How do you think it's going to change?
Yeah, I think all of the infrastructure that exists, I'm not disheartened or disillusioned. I mean, it's going to be here for some time. We've kind of married to it. But I do think that we're going to just add layers to that, right? It's not a this or that. It's a this and that situation. And I think with Web3, having the ability to airdrop to people's wallets and have financial activations embedded in promotions, in coupons, in Starbucks is doing rewards and stuff now. It's like that might not be a text message or something, but for you to be able to go into a place and have a way to interface with it that is unique or reflecting of your experience with that brand, like that's something that I think is very new that email can't do, or if it does, it's like kind of pieced together through 3-4 steps. This I think
Yeah,
could be really seamless or you may come into a place, you may not even know that you've been airdropped something. You may have a promotion there. You may unlock something there. You may get a perk or a token gated experience. All of those things I think are really cool activations that people haven't really dove that deep into yet. I think about Nike with the resale market. They're starting to do NFTs and what it would mean to securitize collectibles and things like that. Like, yes, you have the resale value and I think the immediate things that everyone's seeing, but also to see everyone that's engaged with those products in a public ledger, to have that kind of information be visible and to understand how you can reach out to these people or to manage airdrops or to drive value and lead gen for companies. Like, there's a lot of communication and I don't know, just the way to kind of aggregate people online is totally different than what we've seen in Web 2. And I'm excited to see kind of what people do with that and how something like airdrop, it sounds so simple, but it could be any type of smart contract, any type of coded experience, which, as we know with the internet, it could be anything, right? So it's like, I think that there's a lot there for us. We're focusing primarily on airdrops. We do want to do token gated chat, so you do have the kind of privacy and security and exclusivity that brands want to build around their products and services. But we also imagine this being extended to check-ins, right? Proof of attendance for QR codes and using that for ticketing, and understanding that when you redeem this, that maybe you're now on a different customer journey. You redeem this because you went to this event, you get this collectible that gets you into this niche section of the community, and so you're engaging with people that are really maybe at the event that you went to or interested in the artist that you were there to see or the brand or whatever that you were trying to engage with. And I think that you'll have a lot more nuance there. And in that nuance, you'll get a lot of creativity.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because, I come from like a long history of helping software companies with growth. And always, without fail, the highest revenue channel has been email. Because it is, as you said, it's that direct one-to-one. And I spoke to somebody who runs like a Web3 marketing agency recently, and she was saying that in the summer, they ran a campaign for a client, and email was the highest revenue channel. And I think it's because, sort of, as you mentioned, that wallet-to-wallet communication isn't quite there yet. But it's really interesting to think of how that nuance could work with sort of airdrops of office things, because it adds so much more to what can be done now with email that is like the primary revenue driver for so many businesses. Like you said, you go to an event, but you engage with such and such at the event, that tags you to get something different, but a direct communication to you. There's just deeper levels, I guess, like what we can do with email now. Am I right in thinking that through what you guys are building, you could essentially do what email does now with sort of onboarding, with nurturing people, with offering coupons, promos, all of that sort of stuff, but it could be more targeted and more personalized based on their not just digital actions, but their in real life actions as well?
Absolutely. And I think, my background being in marketing also, and thinking about, growth drivers for brands, doing a lot with social media marketing and promotion. Email is always really effective, but sort of in the rest of that ecosystem where you're all just on these platforms, a lot of it is impression and interest categories, right? So it's trying to get you almost like clickbait to engage with something. I like something, and then, okay, how can I pull that person deeper into a funnel, right? Yeah. But with Web3, what we're seeing, and we always like to talk about at Blocksee, the death of cookies, right? And how Web3 will kind of play a role in supplementing that. Obviously for those listening, iOS 14, led to a lot of privacy concerns for companies and their ability to target people, as people are able to protect their privacy a little bit more actively now. We're seeing that impressional data is very hard and tricky to navigate then, because it's smaller subsets of groups. You don't know who's opting in. You don't have the same kind of attribution models. So what we're seeing with Web3 as a way to do this is like, okay, well, instead of focusing on the impression or the interest category that's really kind of top funnel, here's a public ledger without me needing to know anything about the person, everything that they've purchased, every smart contract that they've transacted with. So you can imagine if there's like a proper tagging system on these transactions and the companies and smart contracts, that you can start to really narrow down. You can really start to get personal on the things that really matter to that person, um, the experiences that they're going to, how they're checking in, and it's going to change. I think the access that people have as brands to their end user by removing a lot of the intermediaries that kind of safeguard that data or kind of mask that data for their own gain. And so I'm really excited to see kind of how that plays out. And we're already seeing, I think, with marketing, this push even in Web 2, right? From like new players like Amazon, where they have so much transactional data that they really become a disruptor in the space almost because of that access. And so Meta and all these other people are trying to figure out, okay, how do we get into metaverse so we can, have some of that transactional information, Google getting into shopping and transport and things that are more, solid, than just kind of like pointing you in a direction and saying, hey, I think this person likes this, try and send some ads to them. It's really like, no, this person bought this person actually went to that event, this person is actually reselling this at this kind of rate. Let's start thinking about activations based on that.
Yeah, no, that is really quite interesting. And like you said, with email, it is a numbers game with email, because you are sending out lots of stuff to try and identify those people who like A, who like B, who have done X, who have, want to do Y. Once you've figured that out, that's where the money comes in. But to be able to look at somebody's actual on-chain interactions stuff and be able to understand and basically cut out a lot of the trial and error and go straight to that point, that could be really quite cool. Really quite useful for a lot.
And what's even crazier is like, you can imagine now with and so like with stuff now with like, you mentioned AI or generative type platforms, like you could start then having AI custom targets. So you can have a smart contract and like your activation, but then start delivering a custom image NFT based on everything that they've collected that will be more palatable for them, rather than like one campaign that goes everywhere. So it's like there's a lot of things that I think are interesting.
Sorry, I was just going to say, this is something that I've spoken to people about as well. It's like when everybody's now saying to me like, oh, why are you still working on Web3? Everyone's moving to AI. And I'm like, I don't think it'll be one or the other. The two technologies are going to be interlinked and like beneficial to one another in not immediately, but a couple of years down the line. They're going to be so much more powerful together.
100%. And I think if you look at AI, really what drives the power of AI is quality, transparent information sets that you can trace and verify, right? Blockchain is nothing but that. It is literally a ledger of how everything is interacted, what information exists. So it's like for AI to be able to index that, I think it's just going to make it more efficient, right? It doesn't have to go through these like opaque, different users, or have just like the people that are using it refine it. You can look at the whole network and learn from that.
And that's the thing, a lot of the stuff that you see that's produced by AI now, within seconds you can be like AI, because it's very flowery and it talks around the point and it's vague. But if you had that sort of more specific data sets as the prompt to let it jump off from there that would be so much better. Interesting.
Yeah, like remember this person from that event? They're trying to reach you. Like, it's like it'll know, like basically like based on transactions, it'll know how to make it the most engaging for you. So there's a level of trust there, and then there's also a level of like, okay, it's actually verified based on something that I've done, not just like what other people have told this AI, about the world. Yeah. So I think like you talk about accessibility to AI as a way to kind of steer it, right? It's like if only a niche amount of people have access to it, and it learns from only that niche subsect of people, like how effective is that AI really on a global basis? Like, is it really just, is it good or bad? There's people that are debating it, but I think the more information, the more accessibility, and the more democracy within that data for all these AI models, the better I think we'll all be from it.
I agree. Yeah. We'll see. And then obviously that data is what's going to make the sort of CRMs so valuable as well, and so valuable for companies. But what really should you be looking for when, if there's a brand out there that's looking for a CRM to help them sort of inform their marketing decisions, what would be the key features that you've got to look for?
Sure. I think like right now, the number one thing that we're going to see from any agency or team wanting to adopt it is just ease of use, right? I think there's been too many people that have built tools that are by engineers for engineers. We need tools that are by engineers for marketers or for just like the artist, or for the common person that's going to see an ad and download this app. That's I think the goal that we need to get to. I think when you're looking specifically at feature sets and things like this, you want to have something that's natively built around a wallet, right? I think there's a lot of people, when you search, CRM for Web3 projects, there's a lot of Web2 things that come up like Zoho and Salesforce. You got to understand where the limitations in that are, and you have to understand like what it is that you're trying to do with your community. If you're just trying to send emails to a collection of NFT holders, like HubSpot maybe for you. But if you're trying to do more activations, think about token gated experiences, aggregate more first party data to your website. You want to look at CRMs that are really catered to a Web3 audience that may offer you, plug-in tools like that we have for forms and chat that can live natively on your website. And then also things like lead gen, I think is really exciting for Web3, specifically because we operate off of a smart contract to formulate all of our projects, a smart contract or wallet address. It gives people a great opportunity for lead gen as well. So, if you're looking at other marketing communities, if there's a smart contract associated with the community that you're interested in, maybe people who are running on Discord or whatever, you can go ahead, upload that smart contract and get lead gen. And to understand really how you can leverage that public ledger to maximize your reach and to maximize your marketing success, I think is going to be key for anyone looking at Web3 CRM right now.
Interesting. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there with one of the things that bothers me so much is just that user experience. I think unless that improves, that sort of mainstream dream for Web3 projects is just not going to happen. Because, I always think at the minute, even just, signing up for a wallet and having different wallets, your hot wallet, your cold wallet to keep things saved, all of this kind of stuff. I get calls from older relatives to like add email to their new phones. There is no way these people are going to be able to link, have multiple wallets and do and all of this. It's just way too complex. So yeah, I think UX is definitely going to be the key thing. But then once that's there, it'd be quite interesting as more and more people on board and use wallets, what it could do for us all.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a challenge to get any 70-year-old relative to start, holding seed phrases and trading, from different chains and stuff to get the right token. So I feel you on that one for sure. I think for us, it's like we got to start there with the building blocks, which represents still the sizable community, about 80 million plus, active wallet holders and growing. But then also partnering with brands, really as a CRM, we're looking at the agencies, we're looking at big brands to form partnerships early on to figure out, okay, well, how do we get your massive communities engaged with these new technologies in ways that are not intimidating, but elevating to their end experience, right? We don't want to detract from what these brands have already built. That's why they have the communities that they have. So things like fiat on-ramps for tokens, things like email integrations for wallets or custodial wallets. These are things that I think we've seen have positive impact. I think Coinbase, one of the last standing brokerages now, but they were really good early on about focusing on interface, focusing on integrations with email and existing infrastructure, and just being totally transparent with that entire process and trying to do things to the utmost degree. And I'm giving a sort of shameless shout out to Coinbase for some reason, but it does prove the point that I think if you go with that ethos, end users will stick around.
It's the same thing. I often think of Binance, same thing, but they have that. You sign up with an email address, and it is basically for most people a sort of Web2 experience to sign up to that brand. The wallet and everything you have nothing really to do with. Benefits, pros and cons to that, but for getting people on and to actually use the product, that's just so much easier. But you mentioned going after big brands and agencies because that's who are going to get the most value out of this. How do you guys assess who's a good fit and who's not, and then what would they need to look for in you guys to assess whether or not this is a good fit for now? Is there any key indicators that would be this is what we need for you, looking for them as a client or them looking for a CRM? I'm trying to just think about how they make that decision.
For sure. And we try and cater to all audiences, right? I mean, obviously, as you said, agencies and the larger companies like that have the community, that have the spend and the budget for these things are kind of our first tier. But we also want to tier down to individual creators and influencers that want to be able to look at their community and say, and this applies for brands and agencies as well. They're saying these are the communities that we have, these are the brands that we're representing. How can we add value to something that we already have, in a way that's built on Web3, that's dynamic, that's creative, and that might give us some kind of differentiation in the space that we're in. So, the example that I gave you earlier, that was an individual project with the cattle ranches, right? So it's like they wanted to take a very traditional market, create a more securitized way of monitoring their assets, and monitor them, sort of in the ecosystem. With agencies, that are working with either celebrities, like we have Metacurio that has done things with Dennis Rodman and the Mike Tyson collection. For them, they were like, okay, here's a personal brand, here's a personal product. How can we elevate that with gamified experiences? How do we give them more access to the communities that are following them on social media? If you think that there's something that you can monetize in terms of the reach and the audience and the community that you've built, in a way that gives you more insight into who it is that you're interacting with or who your fans are, that's really where I think the value drivers are. So if you're an agency that's working with brands, or if you are a big brand and you're saying, you know what, I want to know more about how my actual users are attending our events or are purchasing our products, or how they're reselling our markets. I mentioned Nike a couple of times, but their resale market every year is like almost $1 billion. It's like they're not getting any of that resale right now. It might be, prudent to them to be able to put an NFC chip in the sole of each shoe that ties to an NFT, and so when you retrade it, you can, kind of hold your phone to it, authenticate it right there, and then you don't need as many intermediaries. It's like a whole process that enriches something that already exists around their products in terms of how people resell it and collect them. And it also can give royalties to maybe artists that they collaborate with, right? So it could become more of a marketing and kind of a way to position themselves as an artist platform, or a more collaborative platform, which I think that they've taken that approach, and many brands are today. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there, and if you're a brand, I just want you to be thinking like as creatively as possible, because I think there's more possibilities than you're probably thinking about right now, and the only way that you're really going to get into them and understand which ones hit are trying them out.
I guess that kind of like is the summary for this whole thing, right? It's like a good Web3 CRM is going to take the sort of personalization that exists and offer just a deeper, more nuanced level to that is going to enable brands to have better communications that are both more valuable for the users and more profitable for the brands. Everybody wins, everybody's happy. It's just better.
It's just better. It's just better.
Yeah,
It's totally true, and it's why, like, this is why it's being built. Like, no one reinvents the internet because it's worse. It's there are actual things that people are trying to solve. Like, it's something that we're all really gunning for, and I think it's something that makes sense, because also for these brands that are doing that, it's like, yes, a more nuanced and customized experience for the end user, but you as a brand also are learning more about your community and can enrich the kind of trust that you have with them. You can create experiences that are more empathetic to the subsects of your community and how you're servicing them, right? It's not this one blanketed thing because your impression score or your cost per click on Google said that you had a hit rate here, and so you're just kind of shooting in the dark. It's like you own the data. You can see the end user. You can see what's in their wallet. It's a total public way to engage, and other people can build on that infrastructure with you, which is amazing.
Cool. Perfect. Well, I guess we'll kind of wrap things up there, because that's like a nice way to finish it. But I guess to finally finish up, where's the best way that people can get in contact with you guys, find you? We'll add links to everything below all of this as well, but just if they just want to listen to this and immediately go off and find you guys, where should they go?
Definitely. So you can always find us on our website, blocksee.co. You can also find us on Instagram, blocksee.co, or Twitter, Blocksee CRM. You can book a demo. We'd love to see kind of what you guys are working on and how we can help.
Perfect. Cool. Well, yeah, again, thank you for your time. It's been really interesting. And now I've got to go away and think about the future of CRMs and how I could better leverage them. So you give me a lot to think about. Thanks.
For sure. Are you doing anything right now with? I mean, you mentioned that you were trying to build some community and stuff. Are you working on any kind of Web3 projects?
Yes, but I will save those for another time. But yeah, I'll happily talk through with you when this isn't recording. Yeah.
Oh, got it. Very cool.
Perfect. All right. Thanks again, Josh. And yeah, everyone go check out Blocksee. I'll put the links in descriptions and on the pages and everything below so you can easily find them. And yeah, make the most of
Thanks for having me.
CRMs in Web3. Thank you.